Alice and I are always looking to be more healthy, and we were just talking about how fasting is one of the best ways to do that, but it's so hard. But the great thing about Prolon is that's not what you're doing. It's not that you're not eating for 5 days. Instead, you're using their science-backed program to convince your body you're fasting.
You guys, this 5-day program really is amazing. It comes beautifully packaged and it does all the thinking for you. Each day is its own box. And by following their program, I know I just feel so much better. And I can't wait to experience Prolon Next Gen and continue to see results. For a limited time, you can be first in line to experience the new Next Gen at special savings. Prolon is offering the Prosecutors listeners 15% off site-wide plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe to their 5-day program. Just visit prolonlife.com/prosecutors. That's PROLONLIFE.com/prosecutors to claim your 15% discount and your bonus gift. prolonlife.com/prosecutors.
I'm Brett.
And I'm Alice.
And we are the Prosecutors. Today on the Prosecutors, our live Patreon GetVokl. You had questions, we had answers. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special episode of The Prosecutors. I'm Brett, and I'm joined, as always, with my photogenic co-host, Alice.
I think that's a burn when we're an audio podcast.
Well, that's true, but today we have a special treat. Although you can't see it, we did a live GetVokl with our patrons from Patreon, and people did get to see Alice, and unfortunately had to see me. So, you add a lot to the podcast, Alice. What can I say?
No, it was so much fun to get to see our fans, our patrons, actually, come out.
Our best fans.
Our best fans come and chat with us. We had so much fun. If you missed this one due to our inability to properly set up the technological access to GetVokl, we will do another one. We promise. Sorry about that. And if you missed out on this time because you aren't a patron, we'd love for you to join for our next GetVokl, because this was just so fun. It really was a ask anything. We talked about personal lives to careers to case specific sorts of scenarios, and it was really fun, Brett.
It was a lot of fun. And like I said, this is a little different. Some of you guys will enjoy this, some of you may not, but definitely I hope a lot of you will be able to join us for our next one. We're going to try and do this pretty regularly for our patrons. Now, what we're doing today, we're going to play the recording for all of you, but if you want to get on there and ask us questions, then please do think about joining. And, if you want to ask us questions, but not necessarily be on the Patreon GetVokl, feel free to send us an email, prosecutorspod@gmail.com. I'm not going to go through all the other stuff today. Going to do less of the advertising. But here is our live GetVokl. I hope you guys enjoy it, and we will see you next week. But before we do that, a special message from our friends Tim and Lance at Missing.
On February 9th of 2004, 21-year-old UMass Amherst student Maura Murray disappeared in the White Mountains of New Hampshire in one of the most perplexing mysteries of our time.
For years, we have covered Maura's case and the tireless online community that surrounds it in great detail. We have since expanded our mission with this series, raising awareness and shining a light on the stories of other missing persons.
We now sit on the board of directors of the nonprofit organization Private Investigations for the Missing, which was founded by Bruce Maitland. Bruce's daughter, Brianna Maitland, went missing from Montgomery, Vermont on March 19th of 2004. This is Missing.
After all these years, once the podcast started coming out, we started getting tips. One of her husband Richard's family members came forward, specifically asked us to search this spot. It's a 31-foot vertical shaft. And then it went over, and then it went through a crevice, and then there's another room.
How close was this area to where Erica went missing?
Probably 2 miles.
There were sightings of keys within a mile of a diner that she worked at a few weeks before she went missing, asking people how deep Lake Champlain was in certain points, and asking people if anyone would know they disappeared. Just common small talk you make with strangers.
Wow, so that was the other job that Brianna Maitland had.
She was driving really crazy on the way home. She was tailgating, driving fast. She seemed to be irritated about something all of a sudden. Everything was fine, but all of a sudden, and I think it had to do with that phone call.
I was in the dentist chair and the local radio station came on. And that's how I found out. It was Archer Ray Johnson is missing. And I was, okay, that's not a name that you hear. You're in a small town. I knew it was my dad.
But I think sometimes we all need to be reminded that for every day that you don't do something, that you don't act, or you aren't on the offensive, that someone is in great anguish.
Follow us on social media at Missing CSM. Search for Missing in your favorite podcatcher.
I love the knitting. Fantastic use of time.
Awesome. Exactly.
Well, I'll start off with everything you hear on the podcast is real. I am literally in my closet. This is a jacket. So that is not fake at all. And, since Brett and I started recording, I think we recorded the first episode pre-pandemic. And then the next day, they announced the pandemic.
It was literally the next day.
It was literally the next day. And we're like, oh, great time to start a podcast. So since then, we've basically recorded like this, not in the same room, which is not best podcast practices. So if anyone out there is looking to start someone else, you should be in this, and you should not be in a closet.
Right. Well, actually, the closet works pretty well for the sound. But yeah, for those of you who did not believe that Alice records from a closet, if you were viewing this, that is not a lie. Alice is actually in a closet. Well, everybody, hello. Thank you guys so much for joining us. This is our live patron GetVokl. This is definitely a question and answer session. So we'll be on here answering questions for as long as people have questions to ask. I want to thank Tegan and Michelle for already jumping on here. I'm looking forward to hearing what they've got to say. You guys got to fight it out though for which one's going to ask the first question. And those of you who are in the chat room, we'll be monitoring that as well. So if you just want to ask your questions in the chat room, you can feel free to do that. But as it stands, I want to turn it over to you guys. What you got for us?
Can I go first?
Absolutely. Go for it.
Okay. Hi.
Hello.
I know I sent you a crazy message a long time ago. I was rambling, but I was just so excited to be a patron, and I just love your podcast. It's just
well, you can send us all the messages, all the rambling, crazy messages you want to. Look, we love getting those things. People are always apologizing, I'm sorry to send you a message, but it's what are you talking about? We can't believe anybody actually wants to talk to us. So yeah, keep sending them.
My question is, what is the first true crime case you guys talked about, or which one was really important to you that made you want to do a podcast?
Well,
or did you always talk about other?
The first case we talked about is probably Maura Murray, because I'm obsessed with Maura Murray, as everybody knows. So I definitely, would talk about that with Alice and sort of run by my crazy theories. Usually the way it was is Alice would humor me and pretend to be listening while I sort of rambled on and on about these cases. And then she'd be like, oh, that's really interesting. And then somehow I roped her into doing this. And she's like, so insightful and awesome and amazing. And it's like, hey, you really were listening all that time.
No, that's not completely true. It is true that I hadn't heard of a lot of these cases before Brett told me about them. And we'd like walk and go get coffee during work, or we'd go work out because we have a really great boss who lets us go work out, throughout the week. And he would just like entertain me with these true crime stories. And it's mostly me saying, no, that didn't happen.
Right.
That's pretty much it to this day. I sent her a case today and she was like, whoa, I can't believe that. It's like, yeah, crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I started doing it. I think I read In Cold Blood, like, I don't even know when, a decade ago. And that was the first time I was really interested in true crime. And then I went on this sort of true crime binge. And,
Right.
Alice and I talked about doing this for a while before we actually got started. So I'm glad we finally did get started.
And for me, mostly I'm interested in true crime cases that directly affect me. Like if it looks like it could be me, I get really scared. And I follow everything about it because I'm thinking about my escape plan, I guess. Like, what do I do if I'm stuck in the back of a trunk? How I'm going to kick out the tail lights and reach out and wave to somebody. So if a case looks, and I mentioned one of the cases on the podcast, the Annie Lay case from Yale. That was my first semester in law school. She was murdered and she wasn't found for about a week, but she was stuffed in the medical school building. And she was a woman who looked a lot like me. Like we were the same height and weight because they had all, her profile when she was still missing for people to look for her. And there was a murder in New Haven just a couple days ago of a Yale student. And so that hit home really, really deeply. And so cases like that, where I can see a lot of myself in the victims. I know a lot of people have written and said, thank you for treating the victims with empathy. But a lot of it is I see myself in a lot of these victims, or I put myself in their parents' shoes. I can't even begin to imagine what their parents are going through, or their loved ones, fiancés, husbands and wives, if they are not the perpetrator.
Yeah, I found myself putting myself in the parents' shoes a lot more lately since I had a baby myself. It sort of changed. It does, it's cliche, but it really does change your perspective on things.
Thank you.
Great question.
Okay, I have one. So if you guys could wave a magic wand in a case, like a famous true crime case to be solved, besides Maura Murray, what would it be?
Well, that's a really hard one. That one's so hard. I guess, it's not necessarily the one, and I don't mean this in a bad way. It wouldn't necessarily be my top one to solve, but because I would like to see the family and the entire community get closure, I think the Delphi murders would be one that I would want to do, and to get somebody off the street who's obviously very dangerous. And I think we'll do this again. So I think that one would be high on my list. My absolute favorite mystery is the Dyatlov Pass incident. So I think personally that's the one I would like to know exactly what happened on that mountainside. But yeah, I think I'll do those two answers for that one.
Yeah, for me, I think it's the Delphi case. That case hit me to the core. I just couldn't stop thinking about who the perpetrator was. Even after we finished recording all of those episodes, it was on my mind. And I think that's the one that grips a lot of people. We still get a lot of email tips about that case. That one has probably been the case that has generated the most email traffic after the fact of all of our cases. And I think it's because it really strikes a nerve with a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's surprising how many people think they know who did it too. It's kind of and by know who did it, someone they know did it, which is also very sad because we've gotten a lot of people who say, I think it was my father or my brother or my ex-husband, or which is sad because that's a lot of people who think that someone that they are close to is capable of murder. Dean, I saw that there is a new episode, but I haven't listened to it yet. Does it have anything in it, or is it just sort of it's the anniversary, let's release a new episode?
And also, Adrian, yes, the group of people who just recently went missing at Dyatlov Pass is crazy.
I sent Alice that that story today, as a matter of fact.
And Brett said that he really wants to go to Dyatlov Pass, and I said, no, I'd like my co-host.
I do. I would like to go one day, but I would say with a large group of people, but apparently this is like 8 people who just disappeared there. So we'll see whether or not they actually find those people. So Dean says they admit to DNA. So that means they admit that they do have DNA. That's something we assume they had, but I guess that's, I guess it's good that they let us know that.
And what's interesting about that, I know the prosecutor had said, or the former prosecutor said, there was a lot of physical evidence. What that's interesting about there being DNA and the FBI being involved, as well as the state police, is that they've probably run that DNA through the known databases, and it hasn't made a hit, which probably means this person, I'm going to say guy, has flown under the radar and has not been booked for anything. Being booked, you don't necessarily have to be convicted to have your DNA in the databases. You can be arrested. There can be other circumstances that put you into the database. A lot of people are in the databases. So if there's no hit, this guy has probably been living essentially off the grid for a while and hasn't been caught for anything he's done, if he's done anything else, which based on the profile that we came up with, I do think he's done something like this before, or he has done it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think he's definitely done things in the past. It actually wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't have a record, or is a very minor record that would not require a DNA sample, like, some really low level crimes that he got arrested a few times but never convicted of anything. That wouldn't surprise me. And I think it almost has to be the case if they have DNA. And I'll just say about the video, I mean, look, if there's nothing useful in the video, there's no reason to release it. I find it hard to believe if there is additional video that there's nothing useful in the video, but I mean, whatever. I guess that's their decision. They know better than we do. And I've got to think, I would hope, and we talked about this a lot in the podcast, that if they do have stuff that would be useful, that they would release it. Hey, what else you got for us, guys?
I do see that the DA doubled down on not releasing additional video. I don't know if that's the phrasing, but that would suggest there is additional video.
I'm just going to have to listen to it now. Now you got me all like interested in what exactly he said and what exact language he used. Because I don't want... look, and we said this before, we don't want to be critical of these people. We don't want to be overly critical of these people because we don't know their situation at all. And they may have very good reasons for doing what they're doing. And if the video is really just useless and it's just the girls being scared, okay, that's fine. But if there's literally anything useful in that, then I think it's basically inexcusable that at this point they haven't released it.
I'm just putting it out there. Y'all don't have to limit these
they can ask us anything.
Questions.
We can talk about Taylor Swift or cases or whatever. What was that?
You guys have pets? I know you talked about your dog in one case. I have my cat right here.
I do have a dog. I have a hound dog. He's very loud. I'm surprised he never shows up in the background in any of these. But yeah, he's a black and he's basically a black. He's not a purebred or anything, but he's basically a black and tan coonhound. So he likes to chase things and bark at the mailman and be really loud. But he's also very protective, which is nice. So I don't ever worry about leaving here. If he's here, no one's going to get anywhere near him. He tried to kill Alice once, but we wouldn't let him.
He's a sweet dog. He's just territorial. I grew up with dogs, all types of dogs. I've fostered a lot of dogs, mostly big dogs because they're hard to place, like German Shepherd types. And then most recently, I had a long-haired German Shepherd, but unfortunately, she's currently living with my sister-in-law because my son's allergic to him. So it's incredibly devastating, but still in the family. And she has a way better life. She gets a lot of steak all the time. It's not healthy.
Yeah. I don't know what I'd do, frankly, if I didn't have a dog. I love my dog. So Elizabeth says that she grew up just a few miles from Delphi and lived there for over 40 years. I used to get to all kinds of areas like this to take photographs. I never knew about the Moulin High Bridge. So I can't believe this person would not be local. I agree with you 100% on that. And we hit on that a lot. And from talking to Kelsey, this is just not a place that people knew about. It is not the kind of place that if you weren't either a local or someone who was very, very familiar with that area, that you would know about this, particularly at that time. And I just feel like it's such a limiting factor here that it does surprise me that more of these tips haven't been more fruitful. It surprises me that we're still looking for this person, though I still believe they're going to find this person eventually. I really do. I would just be shocked if this case is never solved.
Adrian asks, what case or cases are you dying to cover that you haven't already? We have a really long list, so we really do listen to all of you guys, especially you guys. When you say you want to hear a case, we have a running list of cases we want to cover. Just because it's from my hometown, I am fascinated by, but it's hard for me to really dive deep because I find it so sad, the Austin yogurt shop murders. That, they were my contemporaries, and they were young girls, four young girls who were murdered and burned in a yogurt shop in Austin in a very safe part, at the time. It was a much smaller town, and it's just so devastating. It has a lot of interesting aspects to it, kind of like Delphi, small town, safe town that everyone knows each other, and that the police were very, very, very tight-lipped for a very long time and continue to be tight-lipped about it, even though it's been unsolved for 20 years or so.
Yeah, and that's actually, we're going to do that case eventually just because there's so many interesting things about it. And, some people who were arrested who probably didn't have anything to do with it and that kind of thing. I think there's even a false confession in that case. I mean, it's a really sort of crazy case. For me, a case I would really like to do that I don't know if we're going to do or how we would do it. We might do it more like we did Scott Peterson because it's been done so much, but as the West Memphis 3 case, I find that case to be absolutely fascinating. I listen and read everything that comes out about the West Memphis 3. It's been done so much and in such depth that I don't know how much we could add. Number one, I don't know how much we could add to just doing the story. Number two, it would take forever because there's so much. The trial itself, though, obviously you see the trial if you watch the Paradise Lost trilogy, but it doesn't really go into a lot of depth in the trial. So I do think that maybe is one area that we could add something to that. If you guys listen to the Truth and Justice podcast, that has just a very, very in-depth dive into the West Memphis 3. That is one that I would like to do at some point, though. Okay, let's see. So Adrian says she lived in the neighborhood when that happened. Same street. A lot of my friends knew the girls. So Adrian's from Austin too, Alice. Who knows? You guys may have ran into each other at some point.
Maybe. Let's see.
Do you guys have any cases that are like, we're not doing that one? Besides Chris Watts, that you're like, absolutely not.
Don't do Chris Watts, please.
I don't know how Alice feels about this. I mean, I try not to limit us too much. I have no interest in doing Chris Watts. I don't really have any interest in doing Stephen Avery because I feel like Stephen Avery's just been done to death. I have some interest in doing Adnan Syed, but that's another case that's been done to death, and I just don't know if it's really worth doing or not. For me, the cases that I just don't have a lot of interest in doing are cases like Chris Watts, where it's just a really terrible, horrible case that involves killing kids, where there's not a whole lot of mystery. I know people argue about whether or not his girlfriend had any involvement and that kind of thing, but at the end of the day, I mean, look, Chris Watts had killed his kids, and I don't know whether or not she knew more than she claims she knows. I kind of doubt that she did, but I just don't. To me, diving into that kind of case is just not that interesting. So I think that's definitely one. I don't know, Alice, if you have any other ones that you feel that way about.
Yeah, in the same vein, basically cases that are just incredible stories, but there's no mystery and there's no question of who did it. I don't think we have much to add, and I think if we go down that path, it's more sensationalizing a terrible crime, and it doesn't do really justice to the victims. So I agree, the Chris Watts case kind of falls into that category. But I think if there's any case that we feel like we have something to add, even if it's been done a lot, which obviously, we've covered a lot of cases that are well known, but we feel like we have something to add, then we'll do it, because we have no interest in just rehashing what's already been out there. A lot of people can do
And
that.
I think that's why we did Scott Peterson, because we felt like we could bring something to Scott Peterson that you don't hear a lot, which is the actual sort of analysis of the trial and the evidence and all that stuff. So even though Scott Peterson has been kind of done to death, it was something we could add to. And I think if we did West Memphis 3, we wouldn't just want to do it like everybody else does it. We would want to try and actually look at the trial, because I think it's interesting. Obviously, I think most people believe that the original West Memphis 3 who were convicted were wrongfully convicted. I assume that's true, but I think it would be interesting to look at the trial and see, kind of like Scott Peterson, is there actually more evidence that we don't normally hear about? I don't really think there is, but that would be interesting to look at. And just to talk about some of the crazy stuff that happened in that case and where the prosecution went horribly wrong and some of the really bad decisions by the judge. So I do think that is one of those things that we might look into. Dean says, when you decided to start podcasting, did you guys just jump right in or a bunch of trial runs? We basically jumped right in.
So, yeah, I was going to say something that, for good or for bad, what y'all hear, we don't do multiple runs. That is just like stream of consciousness. We edit minimally, basically, if we drop an F-bomb or if it's like a particularly egregious mispronunciation, we'll cut it out because it's just.
I usually put that at the end if we do that.
Yeah. But what you guys hear is really just our long conversation with each other. Now, a lot of work goes in on the front end to research what the cases are, and we know where we're going. So we're going off of the same, sheet. But we are not scripted, obviously. You can tell we're not scripted. And so all of the back and forth banter conversation, we never know exactly what the other person's going to say. We know generally the categories we want to cover, but it's not like, okay, you make sure to cover 404B and I'll cover FOIA. There's none of that. It's really all organic, which makes recording really efficient because you're not getting like 5 hours of material for 1 hour podcast. 1 hour podcast is probably like hour 15, and the extra 15 is us laughing at each other. But what you're getting is really us.
Yeah. And when we decided, it really was just a matter of deciding to do it. And then once we decided to do it, I don't know. I just felt like I had a lot of faith in our ability to kind of pull this off. I just thought we could do this. And so, the problem with doing a podcast is you do kind of have to make an initial investment with equipment and everything else. And so we just sort of dove in. If it hadn't worked out, if we'd have done it and we were terrible and everybody hated us, it was all 1-star reviews, eventually I guess we would have moved on. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I do think it works out. I do want to say, somebody asked us if we would be willing to do the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. We're open to doing just about anything. It is really a very narrow set of cases that we're not all that interested in doing. And, I think Chris Watts is probably my ultimate exception. But if there are cases you guys really want to hear, let us know. You guys are the best. We don't really even understand why you guys support us like you do. We're happy that you do. And if there are things you want to hear, we want to do it. So don't be shy in sort of letting us know when there are cases that you're interested in hearing. Oh, my kids don't listen to the podcast, says Julie, but they do always want to hear how Brett introduces Alice every Tuesday.
Aw, that's sweet.
Oh, that's a lot of that's a lot of pressure going forward, Alice. I got to come up with some good stuff.
No big deal.
I'm running out of superlatives.
I know you have to reach to other languages. I don't think that speaks very highly of me that you've run out of words in the English language to describe me.
Well, only the best will do. There's only so many mediocre. My mediocre co-host, Alice, can't do that. That'd be terrible. Let's see. Brett, did you listen to the True Crime Garage Amy Mahalovic update? No, I saw that they had done it, but I haven't listened to it yet. I did see James Renner's post about that. That was a case we've always intended to do. By the time we do it, hopefully there'll be a resolution. And look, this goes to something we have said in a lot of cases. For those of you who don't know, Amy Mahalovic disappeared, 35 years ago, longer than that. In a little town in Ohio. She was actually She was sort of the old-fashioned kind of grooming. She got a telephone call from someone who said that they knew her mother, and I believe that her mother had gotten a promotion, and they wanted to take her to buy a present. So she met them in front of a Dairy Queen or something after school, and then her body was found a couple weeks later in a field. And that case, James Renner at the time, I think he was like 8 or 9 years old, and he became obsessed with the case because she was the same age as him. And he wrote a great book. If you haven't read, I mean, you should read. All the James books are great. Whether you like James Renner or not, his books are fantastic. I like James as a person. I know he's controversial, but his books are fantastic, and that's a great book. Anyway, he's been looking for the killer, and this is like the coldest of cold cases, right? We're never going to know anything. Well, just this week, there was a court filing where it appears they have a really big break. Essentially, someone who knew something finally talked, and hopefully, and you hate to get your hopes up too much because you can be really disappointed in all this stuff, but hopefully that's going to lead to the killer. And that's what we say about all these cases. It's true of Delphi. If Maura Murray is a case that involves foul play, it's true of that case. There's always somebody out there, Missy Beavers, whatever case you want to point to. If it's a murder, there's always somebody who knows something. And it's just a matter of getting that person to finally come forward. And that's one reason, a lot of people think that true crime is exploitative and they don't like it and they're upset by it. But the fact of the matter is, the more people talk about these cases, the more likely someone like that is going to come out. So very hopeful that it turns out that's going to be the case, and we'll be following that one closely. And like I said, we will probably do that case at some point. You have to say it with an accent. Which accent am I having? I don't know. I don't know what that one means. Everything I say is with an accent, though, so that should be fine.
Or maybe everyone else has the accent, Brett. You're the only one who speaks properly.
British.
Obviously.
I can't do British. I can't do Aussie. I can only do me. I tried Russian that one time, and that was terrible. That didn't work out at all. Elizabeth is right.
Elizabeth says, totally recognize Brett's accent. It's typical Bama,
yeah.
Which it is.
It is. It is. Can't hide it. Roll Tide.
You guys, these are really great questions.
Yeah, keep them coming.
You are like so not, digging down deep and personal.
I know.
I'm about to ask Brett some personal questions.
I know.
Way to go, Elizabeth, War Eagle. Just because I let you get under Brett's skin.
Yeah, Alice and I don't agree on everything. I'll just say that.
Certainly not football.
No, certainly not football. And Alice is the worst because she grew up in Austin. But whatever. I don't talk about this. It's fine.
I am a fair weather fan. That is absolutely true, and I don't shy away from it. It's okay.
True. It's true. You absolutely are. Okay, come on,
guys.
Right,
I'm gonna ask Brett some deep dark questions. Your favorite drink?
My favorite.
We talk about your drinking so much.
And see, Dean just asked what's your go-to drink for recording.
Dean, you and I right there.
I know, it's great minds think alike. So look, my favorite drink, and I assume we're talking about alcoholic drinks here. We're not just talking I love a good bubbly. As you can see, it's not as a bubbly night. Mango, it's fantastic. If you haven't had it,
mango's my favorite flavor.
But yeah, bourbon. I love bourbon. Basically anything with bourbon in it, or just bourbon. Bourbon by itself is fine. And usually, if Alice, makes fun of me for drinking while we're doing the podcast, as she did in one of the episodes where she said she heard the ice clinking, that is usually bourbon. Usually, what I have is I have a glass. I have one of these can of bubbly, and then a glass of bourbon, and I sort of alternate between the two. And if Alice takes a really long time to show up, sometimes I'm on my second or third one. So those are probably the shows that aren't as good. Or maybe they're better. I don't know.
Those are the blooper shows when he's about 3 drinks in. And I'm like, come on, I was putting my kids to bed.
Yeah. Now, that time I forgot my name, I had not had anything to drink that day. So I have no excuse.
Adrian, do you have to edit out the burps from the bubbly? Yeah.
On occasion.
It's really great.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things that we always edit out. I was listening to a professional, this is from Elizabeth, talk about the fact that only 5% of cases are solved after a year. What do you think about this? I'm so focused on the Delphi murders and just don't want to believe that the POS will get away with it. Well, you can't really apply that kind of statistic to a famous case, which is one reason that attention is so important. Most cases, if they haven't been solved in a year, the police aren't really even looking into them anymore. They're ice cold. There are no leads. Unfortunately, it's probably a case involving someone that is not the kind of individual that gets a lot of attention. So, if you're in a gang and you get murdered and it's not solved immediately, the police are probably not going to spend a lot of time looking into you. We've seen that a lot with particularly vulnerable people who are sex workers, people who are, Alice and I are looking into right now, a lot of these indigenous people, Native Americans, those kind of crimes where they're just not solved, and they're not ever solved, and they're not solved in a year, and they're not solved in 10 years. And I think it's true. It's certainly true. And a lot of people will tell you that if a crime, particularly murder, is not solved in the first 48 hours, 72 hours, first week, a lot of times it won't be solved. I don't think that's necessarily true with a crime like Delphi, because Delphi has so much attention on it. And once again, there's no question that somebody knows something about what happened at Delphi. There's just no question about that. And I've got to think at some point that's going to shake loose, either because one of those people who knows something, they're going to end up getting arrested for some low level crime. And, we're going to find out that they know something because they're going to use it as a bargaining chip, or somebody's that doesn't even know they know something is going to realize it and speak up. And plus, all the resources that go to that case, it's just a fact. They have a massive task force for those 2 murders. There are no telling how many murders occur in Indiana every year. And probably most of those murders don't get 100th of the resources they're going to this case. So I do think there's a good chance it'll be solved. That's sort of a deeply moral question about the way those resources are allocated and whether or not we should be a little bit more thoughtful about that. But I don't know. Really, I have no answers.
Give you guys a little view of how these cases can be solved. We see it in our own investigations. You will talk to, say, 25 different witnesses. They all know a slice, and they don't think they're telling you anything worth anything. This is why being a good interviewer is very important. But you, as the person who has the knowledge of all 25 or more interviews, begin to see the web, and the web starts to come together. And none of the people who are parts of the web know that they are touching the web. Eventually you begin to see the picture yourself as the investigator. And I forgot, I think the statistic was like 10,000. At some point, the Delphi hot tip line had gotten like 10,000 tips or something like that. Now, of those 10,000, a lot of them probably are trash, right? A lot of them are probably just like, I really hate my dad. It's probably him because he's just a hateful person. That's probably not helpful. But probably a lot of those tiny little dots are being plotted out by the task force. And over time, that's going to start to form a picture, and they have a better idea of what they're looking at, especially if these tips are coming in from all over the country. Because this person, even if they are a local, may have traveled to another place. They may have gone to Connecticut before, freaked someone out there, visited a cousin when they were younger in California and really creeped out that cousin. So the web grows in a famous case. Now, the web crumbles, think about it that way, and the pieces that you have start to fade away as witnesses die or forget things in a cold case. So that's why Brett says there's a difference between the cold case, the every other case, and the famous cases. And what true crime does for the famous cases is making sure keep forming as opposed to degrading away.
Yeah, and we talked about that. We were on with Lance and Tim. Dean just asked a question about that. We were on with Lance and Tim a few weeks ago, or last week. I can't remember when we were there. And they asked something about this, and I said something like, one of the reasons Maura Murray's case is famous is because of them, and the more and I love what they're doing now, really branching out. The more focus you have on these cases, it's just a fact. The more likely they're going to be solved. And I think everybody agrees with that. I just don't think there's any question. It's like the old, wanted posters, right? I mean, why do wanted posters work? Because people see it and they're like, oh, I recognize that guy. And this is like taking that and amplifying it a million times. Elizabeth asked about the Evansdale murders. We're going to do that case eventually. I don't know enough about it to say whether or not Delphi and Evansdale are related, but we've had enough people ask us that question that I think it's worthwhile to do it. Dean says, why does no one talk about Bill's movements once he got to New Hampshire? So Bill, talking about Maura Murray here. For those of you who don't know, if there's anyone out there at this point who doesn't know the Maura Murray story, Maura Murray disappeared in New Hampshire. Actually, yesterday was the anniversary of her disappearance, 17 years ago, I think. And Bill Rausch, who was her boyfriend at the time, who was never really considered a suspect until I would probably say in the last five or so years, some people have begun to think he was a suspect. After Maura disappeared, Bill came to New Hampshire to help look for her. And there are some people who speculate that possibly he could have found her if she wasn't killed the day she disappeared, if she was running away or whatever, he could have found her and done something. And we've actually said there are two camps. The one camp is he somehow got up there and did something to her. And the other camp is she disappeared. He went up there and did something to her. Alice and I talked to his commanding officer. He was actually in the Army at the time and was in Oklahoma. We talked to his commanding officer, and it seems we are fairly convinced that there's no way he could have been there that day. And Dean, I do think there are people who are looking at that. I don't know whether or not it's even possible. I don't know if there was a big enough time where he was unaccounted for to have done something. My personal opinion is I don't think Bill really had anything to do with it. I know a lot of people don't like Bill for a lot of reasons, and plenty of them justified. But I don't think he had anything to do with Maura Murray. Now, that doesn't mean I don't think people should look into that, because if it turns out there is evidence that he disappeared for 6 hours, that would be something that would be interesting to know. Michelle, do you have something?
Yeah.
I feel like you were on the verge of asking a question.
Something. Do you think people focus on Bill too much? Because when you guys did that extra episode with the commander, I was just like, I don't know. I feel like they're going in the wrong direction. It's not plausible that he would be there around that time. So I just feel like they're just grasping at straws. And I have to get off the Reddit sometimes because I'm just like, this is too much. I just can't. So that's my thought.
Michelle, I think you have your, thumb on something there. Yeah, I think a lot of the vitriol directed at Bill is because of who Bill is painted to have been in the last 5 years or so, or what's come out. So his character and, who he is, rather than his opportunity to have done something. And we see this in a lot of cases where a lot of attention is directed at someone just because they are someone who's easy to hate for whatever reason. Now, we saw this in the Scott Peterson case. In that case, I think the evidence, does point to Scott Peterson being the murderer of his wife and son. But you can see how initially, when there was no evidence really gathered about him at the time, the media immediately turned to him, and they already had a narrative written about him. Now, in that case, I do think that ultimately the media was right about him, but you can really go down some rabbit holes that does a disservice to the case and does a disservice to the victim when you just pile on vitriol to a person because they're an easy target, or they're a person that's easy to hate for everyone. In this case, like Brett said, we don't think there's any way he could have been there at the time that Maura's car crashed. So it had to have been after. Now, just think about it. We talk about Occam's razor all the time. What's most likely? So what? Did he premeditate that he wanted to kill her at some point? Did he call her and say, I'm coming to kill you? And she's like, I got to run away. And she runs away. Somehow was able to see in the future that she was going to crash her car, disappear, have no one find her, go to the commanding officer, not knowing if he'd be approved for leave, get leave, fly across the country, show up. No one's been able to find her who's been searching so far. He somehow is able to find her in a short amount of time with no one, able to detect that he's gone, and then kill her then. And then, I mean, sure, maybe it seems like a major stretch that you're trying to push this square into a round hole, and it maybe ultimately it happened. We have no idea. She's been missing for so long. There don't seem to be real leads that we know of publicly. And so I think you're right about that. It's more about him as a person than the evidence pointing to him.
Yeah, and Carly, Bill's had some legal troubles. We can't really get into it that much because he has an ongoing criminal case, and we don't really want to dive into that too much. But it's easy if you Google it, you'll find out what all is going on with him. But in between that and the fact that usually if someone disappears or they're murdered, the significant other is involved. A lot of people, he would be a good suspect were it not almost impossible for him to be involved, like Alice said, and you see this sometimes in cases. We talked about the Missy Beavers case. I mean, there are people who believe with all their heart that her father-in-law did it. because her father-in-law walks exactly like the person who killed her. And, there's so many things where people have compared how he walks with the way the killer walks. But unfortunately, it just seems like he has an absolute airtight alibi in that he was on the other side of the country when it happened. Same thing basically here. How could he have done this? And I do think people focus on it too much, Michelle. Yeah. I said on the Missing Maura Murray podcast that we did that I think people should focus on the case, follow the case. And if it turns out that Bill has something to do with it, by developing the case more, evidence will also, I think, naturally lead to whoever was responsible, if there was anyone responsible. So I think less focus on Bill, more focus on Maura, and see if in the focusing on Maura that leads to Bill, that's fine. But for now, yeah, I think there's so much controversy about him, it sort of swallows the rest of the case. Elizabeth says she remembers the Yale case where the young woman was killed by the lab assistant. That was so tragic.
Dean says, okay, super random. My wife and I are checking out the Britney documentary. What the hell is a conservatorship? And have you guys seen cases like this in your career? I am so excited to watch the Britney documentary. I would be watching it now were it not for you all. So I haven't watched it yet, but I'm really excited to watch it. Conservatorship. So this is civil law. It's not criminal law. So our knowledge is going to be limited, but generally conservatorship is going to be, someone has an inability to, make decisions for themselves. So think about the mentally handicapped, a young child who's orphaned, but they're left a trust. Their parents left them a lot of money. You don't give, $500,000 to a 5-year-old. So there's trust and there's conservatorships, and the conservatorship helps the person who is typically of a diminished capacity decide how to use their money so that they don't spend all of their money in one place, so that it can, in theory, last them for their life. So oftentimes you're going to see this in mentally disabled adults who, they may live in a home and they have enough money to care for them, but they can't make any big decision like buying a car or a house or traveling or make any big purchase without the sign off of the conservator. And you have to go to court a lot for approval of things. So in other words, you're just not an independent adult financially.
Now, I don't know how. I mean, I haven't seen the documentary. I have no idea how this is still going on when she's 39 years old or whatever she is.
I followed it a lot. It's insane. And, there was an article today, Brett's wife pointed us to it, where they were talking about the effectiveness of this documentary, which we haven't seen yet, but the effectiveness of telling the story by timeline, because you can really see how things develop in Britney's case, and saying how a lot of people sometimes, I think people do like the way we do timelines, but that's why we do the timelines. It can be very misleading in a lot of these documentaries when things are taken out of context, out of place. And we really try to present things in the manner in which they came, because timelines matter. You know certain things at certain times in the case. And it's not fair to look back on or investigations or to see what people knew at the time. So sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent, but I'm really excited about the Britney documentary.
I assume it's based on the whole when she went crazy and shaved her head and like bashed the car, that somehow that allowed them to say that she's not all mentally stable and they need to do this. And the conservatorships can be very important, you can imagine, for all sorts of reasons. But this one, yeah, I'm going to have to watch it too, because just off the top of my head, it strikes me as very strange.
Sorry, jumping around. Elizabeth asked if I was at Yale at the time of Annie Lay's murder and disappearance. Yes. It was my first semester of law school, so it was a great way to start law school. It was terrifying. I actually mean this. I think there was a lockdown on campus, so every night when it got dark, which is early in Connecticut, by like 7:00, everyone was locked in their apartments or houses wherever they lived, because no one knew like what happened to her, if she was kidnapped, if there was a murderer on the loose. New Haven's not a safe place to begin with. I've definitely been approached by people with guns. So
yeah, Alice was telling me about a murder that happened recently in New Haven on Yale's campus. So
I think they had a press release today, or the police had some statement today at 5:00. I haven't seen what it is, but basically he was driving away from his fiance's apartment, which was like on the same street I lived in, which is a very small street. And they just like, it looks like they maybe rear-ended him, and he got out of the car and they shot him 7 times point blank at 8:30 at night. And he was a graduate student, and his fiance is a graduate student as well at Yale.
We have a spot open if anybody wants to jump in.
Come on in.
Michelle,
Let us see your face.
You said you had lots of questions, Michelle.
Okay, so I have
no
another
pressure. I'm not trying to
more
put all the
question
pressure.
because how I found your podcast was a tweet that James Renner posted on Twitter about your podcast. So when you posted the Maura Murray episode, did James Renner reach out to you, or Tim and Lance? How did that work? Or
Yeah, so James Renner, after I don't know why these guys were watching or listening to our podcast, because at that time we probably had like 25 listeners, right?
And like,
but
they were our family members.
I know, seriously, and friends that we were forcing to listen to it. But James reached out, he emailed us and hit us up on Twitter. It was kind of crazy because James reached out, and then Maggie Freeling reached out, and then Tim and Lance were reaching out, and we're talking to all of them about all this stuff. And then Aaron Larkin emailed us. I mean, everybody, it was crazy. It was just all these people all of a sudden were emailing us. And James, look, I mean, that was probably really big for us that James did that. I'm sure there's a lot of people who found out about our podcast because of that. And I think James, when he heard the Saturn emblem thing, like he sent us this excited email. He was like, "Oh my God." And I think he thought that was really interesting. And he got really excited about that. And so I think it helped, but I have no idea. I don't know how those people, I guess they just are so interested in Maura Murray that anytime anybody's talking about Maura Murray, they're listening to it. So I'm glad we did a halfway decent job, because that was so early in us doing this that, I could barely work Audacity to even do editing. So I'm just glad it worked out, but yeah. And I mean, look, a lot of those people I just mentioned don't like each other, but they were all really nice to us and very helpful to us. And they answered every question we had about the case. And it was really great. And it was really sort of what the community could be and what I'd like it to be. So
cool.
See, Elizabeth says she discovered us with Delphi. I think Delphi, a lot of people discovered. Delphi, we didn't know how. That's another one. Now, I knew how much people love Maura Murray, but Delphi, I did not realize how obsessed people are with Delphi. We do YouTube, and usually our YouTube videos get a fraction of the listens we get on, because we're a podcast, right? We don't make videos. I mean, we make rudimentary videos just so people listen on YouTube. They can listen on YouTube, right? And but for Delphi, we were getting like 10,000 views, which we never get on YouTube, and we haven't gotten since on any other case. So Delphi, it is a case that strikes a chord with a lot of people, which is once again why I think eventually it will be solved.
Julie says there was a new 4-part series on the Elisa Lam case that premiered on Netflix today. Awesome. It's a school night, so I haven't watched it yet. I will definitely be checking that out. Now, that is really interesting. As you guys know, that was our first case. Brett, did we record that first too? I can't remember right now. I think we did. It was one of our first. No, it wasn't.
Yes, we did. It was the first. It was the first case.
Okay, it was the first case we recorded. What was really interesting about that case was people were so angry that we did Elisa Lam. I did not expect angry that we did Elisa Lam. I think people may have misdirected anger in general towards us about random things. Like, if you use that anger for something else, you can really accomplish a lot, like run a marathon or something. And I don't know what exactly it is about it, except that it's a mysterious case. And that was one of the first cases where I think we came out and we're just like, it's not mysterious. This is incredibly sad. We think mental illness is what led to her eventual death, and we don't think there was foul play. People were really angry about that, which I found surprising.
Yeah, it was interesting because there were people who were, this is our sort of first introduction to how people get randomly mad about things online whenever you do anything, which we see all the time now. But it was like, some people were just really mad that we were doing it. They're like, there's no crime here. You called yourself the prosecutors. Why are you dealing with this case? And then other people were just really upset that we went with a kind of a prosaic theory, which I think is what happened. There weren't ghosts and demons in elevator games or whatever. it's a crazy case. That video is one of the most disturbing videos I think you can watch, because, and especially, and here's the thing. I know people like the paranormal. They like the paranormal, and they like to think there's something creepy going on there. I actually think it is far more disturbing what was actually going on. I think it is far more disturbing that you had this young woman who was in the grips of mental illness that she could not escape from, and you were watching it happen to her, and there's nothing you can do about it, and you know what's coming. I mean, to me, it's hard to imagine. That is, to me, far worse than, the Cecil Hotel is haunted and she's talking to a ghost or whatever. I mean, that's okay, but what I think actually happened is just so horrible and tragic and terrible, and we did that case, and the reason we did it was because the whole point of our podcast is not just to talk about trials. We like talking about trials. We know about trials. We think we're pretty good at that. We think we can bring something to it. But we also think looking at evidence in any case, any mystery, in the way that we've sort of been trained to do it, can help bring understanding. So that's not a crime. There wasn't a crime there. At the end of the day, there wasn't a crime there, I don't think. But I think looking at the evidence in the way we look at it helps to uncover that fact.
Dean asked, do you guys listen to the Murder Squad? Will you be a winter distraction?
I don't know what a winter distraction is. I have listened to the Murder Squad. That's Jensen and Holes, right? Is that right? I've listened to a couple of their episodes because I was really interested to know what they thought about some cases. They're obviously really good. Like them a lot. But I don't know what a winter distraction is. Is that like one of the things they do or something? I'm not sure.
We will be here in the winter.
We will be here in the winter. So if you need to be distracted from Jensen and Holes, we're happy to be that person. So let's see, going through what people have.
All right, we have about 8 minutes left. Guys, don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
Oh.
Let's see. You like that we laugh off the haters. By the way, we'll never change anything based on what people say. Like we make fun of what people say, and we'll often bring it up. But don't worry that we're actually going to listen to those people. We're not going to change anything.
They're definitely not the song. Also, didn't know that'd be so controversial as a song. Who cares about a song? But both of our kids love the song so much. Thank you. We like the song too.
Thank you, Michelle.
Our kids like dance intensely to the song, like as if they're at a rave. And so we're definitely not changing it because it's really funny to watch them dance.
Yeah. And Julie, we'd love to have Cheryl McCollum back. We'll definitely do that sometime. I was texting with her yesterday. She's amazing. She just, I don't know. That was one of the most enlightening hours that we've ever had, listening to her. I could listen to her talk all the time too.
So we especially love Cheryl McCollum because we were like just a few weeks into podcasting and no one had heard of us. She certainly hadn't heard of us. And we just cold reached out to her and she was so enthusiastic. She couldn't get her phone to work. We couldn't get our phone to work. And it was like any other person would have thrown up their hands and been like, this is so amateur, forget this. And she stuck with us. And as she was talking, both of us were just like, go on. And she is the real deal. I mean, she is truly someone who is making a difference in the field. And I love the way her brain works. And we keep talking about getting together once the pandemic eases, hopefully. And she is one of the first trips I will make.
Yeah, and Alice and I knew about the Cold Case Research Institute that she's a part of, and had like this dream of one day talking to her. And we had, like I said, this is like the 4th episode that we did or something. Literally nobody knows who we are, but we reached out to her anyway. And just the nicest lady, just incredibly nice, so supportive, just amazing. You should support that all you can. As most of you know, if you buy anything from our store, all the profits go there. So we're happy to be a part of that, and we'd love to have her back on. And we will do that, Julie, as soon as we can. We'll get her back on. I'd love to have her on to just talk about a case. I know she is interested in Delphi and
I want to hear
stuff
her
on
talk
that
about
too.
Delphi.
So, yeah, I would love to hear her thoughts on Delphi. Elizabeth says, I'm curious about the Ohio State man who literally disappeared, Brian Schaefer. Can't remember his name. Any more perspectives on where he might have ended up? I'm loving Alice's theory that he might still be in the ugly tuna Saluna, the greatest named Saluna that ever tuned. You know, Elizabeth, we actually got I don't know if you saw this, Alice. We got a really long email from somebody who is from the area and is fascinated with this case. And they just gave us all this information. It's so long and so much information. I actually haven't read it yet, but I did look at it to know that it's there. So we're going to read that email at some point, and we're due to do a follow-up episode. We got all sorts of following up to do. And so that'll be one of the things we follow up on. I don't think there have been any new developments in that case. Though, like I said, we'll look at what she says. She has like photographs and all these different, for one thing. Okay, well, here's one thing she says. I did read this. We talked about the Wendy's and how it's possible he was on a late night Wendy's run. She says that Wendy's closed at 11. So, she knows things. So he would not have been going there. So, anyways, we'll see what she says.
This guy literally walked into a bar and never walked out.
And never.
Now, a lot of people have said, well, maybe he slipped out a door and he wasn't captured on camera. Of course, that is a possibility, except how is he the one to find the only exit that is not covered by a camera when the police accounted for every single head going in and every single head coming out? I just don't think there was enough time for someone to do ill to him and then somehow get him out in a barrel without being detected. I think that is much too risky. So I really do think he's still in there, and I think it was just some terrible accident. I think right before we recorded that episode, I had been reading an article about, this came out a couple years ago or a year ago, the guy who had been missing for like 2 decades at a convenience store. He just disappeared in the middle of his shift, and they moved this deep freezer that was, how when you go to a gas station and there's a freezer with like all those ice cream bars in it? That's literally what it was. Yeah. And he had been sitting on it, like maybe taking a smoke break, slipped back there. And because of the coils had been preserved, so he never smelled, he wasn't really hidden from view. And when they moved it aside, they like found a perfectly petrified version of this man 17 years later or something like that. I think that is possible because I don't think he was able to slip out without being detected. And I don't think he was looking to run away.
Insane.
Yeah, I think he's within like 500 feet of that bar, either in the bar or very near the bar, maybe the construction zone. I'm not exactly sure. If you guys are fans of True Crime Garage, they do a lot on this. I know the captain, this is a big case for him. He probably knows everything there is to know about this case. And I feel like recently the captain had said something where he actually thinks he might have gotten away from the bar. I don't want to speak for him, but if you're really interested in that case, you should listen to their coverage of that as well. Dana says, and we have another open spot, so if anybody wants to jump on. Speaking of Cheryl, did you get the feeling that she felt that John Bonet's parents were responsible for her death? I got the impression from her. Yeah, I mean, she seemed like she thought Patsy might have not been all that helpful. Was one of the things that she mentioned. We actually, before we even started doing the podcast, we have worked up a very long outline for a John Bonet Ramsey show, which we've never recorded. We'll probably do that eventually, but that's another one that's sort of a monster to try and get into.
Yeah, that's a case I want to do, but
Adrian says
it's a lot. It's a lot.
Well, Adrian says the ransom note is the part I just can't get past. We would probably have to do an entire episode on the ransom note by itself. Yeah. The ransom note is insane. The ransom note is just it's like crazy. I mean, it really is crazy. Now, look. If you read the ransom note, it does not seem like it is written by a middle-aged mom. I mean, there's all these sort of quotes from movies and stuff in it, which is weird, but I don't want to do the whole Ramsey case tonight, but it's just so weird. It's such a weird, strange case, which I think is one of the reasons people are kind of obsessed with it.
All right.
Dean's going to get himself sued if he's not careful. Okay, we got a couple minutes left. Does anybody have any last questions they want to get in for this one? We're going to do this more often. It took us a while to get the technology set up. We still haven't figured out a way to get it.
Let's ask this real quick. We'll have a question for you all. What so this is not case specific, but what do we do that you don't like or you want us to change or would make it more listener friendly? Because we're listening to you guys. We don't care about those haters on like Apple reviews, but we care about what you guys think. So if like you really don't say anything about the song, and if I laugh too much, I'm sorry. I can't help it. So if there's anything, this is your chance. Only the people on this, we're never going to ask this question again in the future. This is it, because I can't handle criticism.
Don't change anything.
Elizabeth says she loves the song, which is good.
Don't change anything.
Well, thank you, Michelle.
Michelle, you're great. Thanks for taking a box too. You're the best.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
And Adrian, we will not change when we're huge to please the masses. If that
We
day
don't
ever
care about
comes.
the masses if you can't.
No,
tell.
I mean, look. Our position on this is we're doing the show that we wanted to do. And there are people out there who are going to like that show. And those are our people. And those are the people we care about. And those are the people we want to be our fans. And the people who don't like the show, we actually don't want them to be our fans. So I always want to tell them when they're criticizing us for something like, why don't you just stop listening? Because it just really isn't important to me that you listen to the show. And, you know, I like you guys. And we want more people like you guys. And the best way to do that is to just drive these other people away, annoying them with our really long songs. And endless banter, and talk about Taylor Swift and the fact that we laugh
and our children.
So,
I'm sorry, I was
children,
chuckling because
exactly.
Dana said the masses are the asses, and that's so funny. Well, I hope you guys know that everything you write to us, we read, and we're usually texting or calling each other, be like, "Did you see what Adrian wrote? Did you see what Michelle wrote?" So we really do. We love you guys. We cannot believe you're here tonight. This morning. I have no idea what time it is for you, and we also cannot believe you keep listening to us. So thank you so much. We love you guys. I hope you know that. So thank you for coming today.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we're going to do this again, and we hope you guys will all show up then. We'll let you know when that's going to happen. But I guess for tonight, we will sign off. I guess we can sign off, right, Alice?
And I'm Alice.
I'm Brett. And we are the prosecutors.
Night, y'all. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Bye.
So I wanted to read you this. So Blair's dentist has been listening to our podcast because Blair told her about it, or I don't know if it's no, it's a her. And she went today and said that she's obsessed with figuring out our secret lives. I love it. Somebody
tell her our lives are really boring.
Well, shout out to Blair's dentist. I hope Blair brushes her teeth.
Shopify is a platform built for growth, whether you're just starting out or already running a thriving business. From managing inventory to creating a seamless checkout experience, Shopify is designed to handle it all. And it doesn't stop there. Shopify helps you sell everywhere your customers are, online or in person. It's the ultimate tool for turning big dreams into big wins. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/OPP.
If you're looking to streamline your audio advertising buys and maximize your revenue, look no further than Triton Digital's programmatic audio advertising exchange, A2X. The private exchange consists of only licensed broadcasters and top-tier internet radio publishers, assuring the quality inventory and brand safety you can trust. Visit www.tritondigital.com to learn more.